With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Something for my godson Elijah and a little girl named Corinne. Some say the blacker the better, the sweeter the juice. I say the darker the flesh and the deeper the roots. I give a holler to my sisters on welfare. Tupac cares if don't nobody else care. And I know they like to beat you down a lot. When you come around the block, brothers clown a lot. Please don't cry, dry your eyes, never let up. Forgive, but don't forget, girl, keep your head up. And when he tells you you ain't nothing, don't believe him. And if you can't learn to love you, you should leave him. Cause sister, you don't need. And I ain't trying to gas you up, I just roll them how I see. You know what makes me unhappy? That when brothers make babies and leave a young mother to be a pastor. And since we all came from a woman, got our name from a woman, and I came from a woman. I wonder why we take from our women, why we rape our women, do we hate our women? I think it's time to kill for our women, time to heal our women, be real to our women. And if we don't, we'll have a race of babies that will hate the ladies that make the babies. And since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. So will the real men get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up.
Keep your head up. Keep your head up in afternoon drive time and all the time. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. And I am your host and White House correspondent reporting from Washington, D.C., where, wow, what a Monday. What a Monday it has been. I mentioned in the first hour that was at the U.S. Capitol today covering Reverend Dr. William Barber, and almost got swept up in an arrest. But I'm okay. But again, I remind you, the First Amendment is not. But it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. We're going to go from one end of Pennsylvania Avenue at the U.S. Capitol to the White House, where the GRIO is reporting that Trump praised Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts at the White House ceremony for the Philadelphia Eagles amid this political debate that is happening. A decades-long tradition, of course, for the White House welcoming the season's NFL championship team. It quickly turned political in the days leading up to the Philadelphia Eagles being honored by President Trump today in the face of public scrutiny about quarterback Jalen Hurts, who did not attend the Eagles ceremony, among several others, and running back Saquon Barkley, who notably hung out with Trump the day before the president was conciliatory of both players, despite speculation that Hurts and other teammates declined to attend the White House ceremony due to political opposition at the administration. President Trump praised Hurts as a star quarterback and a terrific guy and a terrific player. Trump was more flattering towards Saquon Barkley, whom he invited to ride with him on Air Force One on Sunday and played golf at the President's New Jersey golf course. Barkley was front and center among the Eagles during today's ceremony on the South Lawn of the White House, where hundreds of folks gathered. Of course, our friends at the GRIO were there on the South Lawn on this story. Moving along, how Trump's FCC chairman is stoking a culture war. The LA Times reporting that since becoming FCC chairman in late January, Brendan Carr has repeatedly poked the corporate owners of ABC, CBS, and NBC networks that the president dislikes. Conservatives have said that they believe that major networks suffer from extreme liberal bias and intolerance towards opposing points of view that has harmed America and resulted in a plummeting public trust in these national news outlets. That's what they assert, adding that the FCC intervention may be justified. Whereas Carr's critics, however, said that dangling the FCC's enforcement authority over broadcasters in the name of protecting free speech, well, it does just the opposite. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in the days and weeks ahead. But when we come forward, we're switching gears. We're welcoming a citizen detective that is on the case of a true crime story that you've got to hear about. We're all at risk for fraud, and there are lots of different fraud examples of fraud out there. But this particular case, you should pay extra close attention because it may help you protect yourself and protect somebody you love. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You got to live in the reality because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle. And if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, Call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 five-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests. As we effort to build a more perfect union.
KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and it's not every day that you get to talk to a citizen detective. Tyson Wrench is with us today to talk about a new podcast called True Crime News, presenting American Hustlers. It's based on a true story, based on crimes that took place in Palm Springs, the Bay Area, and Hawaii. Please welcome citizen detective Tyson Wrench. Welcome.
Hello, and yeah, I forgot my badge, but yeah.
No worries. Talk to us about how you became a citizen detective, and is the same opportunity available to all of us?
Yeah, well, if you just sign up for my website and my since we're talking about cons, right?
Right.
No, basically, I was I've been working in tech for a long time, and then 2007 rolled along, and for those that remember, that was when everything kind of crashed, and I took a nice severance package and said, you know what, I'm just going to go to South America for a month and take some time off. And so I called my best friend of 5 years and said, hey, want to I'm moving back from Europe. I was living in Europe at the time. Moving back, let's go, have a good time. I just got this nice big check, and so we had a good time, and I went to South America. And again, for those listening or watching, 2007 was just before the iPhone came out, just before Facebook came out. I mean, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was. And so we had to do things the hard way back then. And so, when we wanted to go, we were traveling and you needed to pay your credit cards, you had to find an internet cafe. So I went to the internet cafe after not looking at a computer for 3 weeks. Imagine not having a screen for 3 weeks. Those were the days. And I go online and I have no money. My bank accounts are empty.
Whoa.
And so
big fat zero.
Big fat zero. And the credit cards that I had left at home were charged up. So I said, I should probably go home. And I, when I was in college, to make some money on the side, I worked for a high-tech crime private investigation firm, because back in the early 2000s was when the Pentium processor was out, and that technology was very expensive. A Pentium chip was worth more than gold by weight. And it was also completely legal because there were no serial numbers. So I mean, it was ripe. That was, I mean, talk about cybercrime. That was cybercrime back then. It was in chips. And so I was smack dab in the middle at Santa Clara University, and so it was great, right in the middle of it. So I learned a lot working with all different law enforcement agencies, all of the three-letter agencies, doing all these great busts of these rings that were doing all these high-tech crime. So I sort of turned that all on and said, I should fly home because something isn't right. Flew home, and somebody else's stuff was in my house. There were other people's clothes in my closet. There was different furniture. There was a pile of cocaine on the formal dining room table. So I called the cops, and the cops wouldn't come, because by the time I had returned from Brazil, the bank had put the money back in my account provisionally based on investigation, but at least so that my auto bill pay wouldn't bounce. Mm-hmm. And they didn't take anything from my house. They had left things. So it was technically, it falls under squatting. So there was no crime. And I remember going into the computer room to go look at MySpace, because again, we're gonna go back to MySpace. You know, hi Tom, and and remember you had your top 10 friends, and back then, and that was all controversial too. And so Danny and I were each other's number one friends, and we weren't friends anymore. And but there was a message that said, "I see you and Danny are no longer friends. Did he rip you off too?" And
Whoa.
yes. And I tell you, this very chair I'm sitting in, I fell out of, and I fell laid down on the floor, and I was in the fetal position for probably half an hour. And that's when betrayal hit me. That is when you physically know what betrayal feels like.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So, even as you're telling the story, I mean, right away when you discovered that something was wrong, and we all have those moments where you get that little intuition bubbles up.
Yep.
Where something ain't right. Something ain't right. And so when you initially had that experience while you were still on vacation in Brazil, what did you say to your then best friend, Danny Garcia, who is a part of this podcast story, this true crime story? What did you say to him, and what was his reaction?
So when I got home, I used the landline and called his cell phone, and so that the caller ID would show up. And he answered with sort of a hello. And I was like, Danny? And he's like, are you home? And I said, yeah. And you have some explaining to do, because I discovered that everything in the house was his. And that, basically everything about him was a lie. He was, part of this 3-man con team that had been wreaking havoc for 10 years. And he said, I'm at a business lunch. I can explain everything. I'll call you back. I'll call you back in after I'm done with lunch. And I never heard from him again.
Wow.
So when I went to go call all of our friends in our big circle to warn them, no one would return my call. And so
no one would return your call?
No. And again, people are like, how is that possible? But you have to remember, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have ways to text. We didn't have, there was the communication abilities back then were much more limited. So, you dialed people, we called people. And so but I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that time. And I had ridden the .com boom with the Silicon Valley, tech stuff. And so I was living in an expensive home. I worked from home in the early days before people worked from home. And so people saw me out and about. And so the story goes, I was one of San Francisco's biggest drug dealers. And so that's why I was in South America for a month, because I was running from the DEA. So if you answered my call, you would become part of the investigation. And so no one would talk to me.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so it wasn't until I actually had to go to the bank to sign and basically identify all of the surveillance photos of him stealing my money, that I was able to basically pocket one of the surveillance photos. There was a duplicate, so I just stuck it in my pocket, and I was able to put that on a scanner and email that to everybody and say, look, here's Danny stealing my money out of the bank. Now who do you believe? And that I had to basically go turn on, it's kind of in a Slumdog Millionaire moment, go back to my private eye days and turn into my own little detective to, not only recover my reputation, but then have to go get justice for myself, but then uncover the fact that there are more and more victims that these guys are sort of assembly lining. And that was a shocker that there were more and more victims. I found a business card that they had left behind, called the guy up, and he was an investment banker. I asked if he ever left Danny home alone at his place, and he was like, yeah. I said, has anything gone missing? And he goes, I keep I travel back and forth to London, and I keep British pounds in my passport, which I keep hidden in my closet. And I went to go get it the other day, and there were no pound. The money was gone out of the passport. And I said, did that happen? Was that on January 14th? And he goes, how do you know that? And I said, because I'm looking at a foreign exchange receipt here for 400 pounds at this address. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, that's how much I'm missing. And that address is a block away from me. And I said, well, I'm staring at that receipt. And he goes, I fired my maid over this.
Wow.
And so, like, even though like he had ripped off a friend, someone else lost their job. So it like the cascading effect of these cons, and even just a little one like that, it's incredible and it's devastating.
It is, and you all do a very good job, really laying this story out, your story as a citizen detective. In the new podcast, True Crime News presents American Hustlers, where in the podcast you all dive into your experience being conned by your then best friend Danny, and it also does a good job exploring, just sort of, how this corruption happens and how con artists, how they work.
Yep, exactly.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a murder that was eventually committed related to the con. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what happened is we've got another character in this story who came to the U.S. As the Prince of Nepal. He came on a student visa. And the college that gave him the student visa, by the way, he conned out of so much money that the college actually closed in midterm. There's a whole other story to that. I mean, these cons go on, but I eventually, after 2 years of chasing these guys and just sort of being behind them on each con, but still being a thorn in their side, because I would go to the whatever city they were in, I'd put up a poster in the different neighborhoods and the different bars that they would likely hang out at, and just little warning posters. And
like a most wanted sign.
Yeah, basically beware, maybe beware.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because the bar owners were more than happy to let me put them up. I thought that was really cool. But and I found out later that they did see them and they were awfully pissed off. But I purposely misspelled their names so that I found in their messages to each other that they couldn't be Tyson because he misspelled, because our names are misspelled. And I was like, I got him. But oh my gosh, I do this part where I get distracted. Bring me back to where we were.
No, I mean, this is great, because I mean, how often do you talk to a citizen detective about how they went about?
Yes. So then the murder. So sorry, I have my Kathy Griffin moments where sometimes I have to get brought back. But so I get a call from a friend of mine who is has a roommate who is now dating Danny. And he said, please, I don't want to be that bad roommate. Can you send me something so that I can just give it to him to say, hey, like, don't date Danny. And so I do that. But and I dig up and I find that the Prince of Nepal has been arrested for a jewelry theft of $300,000.
Whoa.
And he's out on bail, but I see his mugshot. And so I call the victim, and I call the victim. I tell him a little bit about my story that you just heard, and I say, look, I'm hunting them. Like, where are they now? And he says, well, I don't know where they're now, but I know that Danny's been going to Palm Springs because a friend of his named Cliff has gone missing. And so I called some of my internet sleuthy friends, and we start searching for a missing cliff in Palm Springs, which it's hard because there's a lot of cliffs in Palm Springs, if you've ever been there, that people fall off of or drive their cars off of, or Cliff Shadows Retirement Home. It was a long process to find, but we did find an article that said that a man named Cliff Lambert had gone missing in December 2008, and we're now in February of 2009. So it's about 3 months later. And I call the Palm Springs Police Department, and I get the Detective Browning and Detective Min, who are on this missing person case. And unbeknownst to me, at the exact same time that I call, they've been made aware that this missing persons man's his house is being sold. So they're like, you need to come in. So I'm like, happy to do it. So I pack everything that they left in my house. I bring it out from the attic, put it in my car, drive to Palm Springs, show up. And then I'm in the white room that you see, in the first 48. And I'm, I realize, wait a minute, this is where they put the suspects. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't have a police report that, because oh God, I could be I'm a suspect here now. And so but I'm telling them the story, and eventually I see them warming up, and I give them everything. They thank me. I walk out, thankfully, a free man. And then a week later, they call me and they thank me, and they tell me they've arrested everybody except my friend Danny. But it's still a missing person case, and but they don't know where Danny is, but they see that he's in Sacramento, and thankfully I spent some time in Sacramento looking for them, and I know where he is. So I don't know the address, but I know the name of the guy he's staying with. And so 2 days later, I get a call. Thank you, we got him. And so I was like, that was my moment of I got my justice, but I didn't realize that was the moment where the story would start, because then they let me know that this is now a homicide case, although they don't have a body.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow. I mean, there are so many plot twists.
In
this story, and it's a true story. And so, I've got to ask you, Tyson, in our remaining minute, what do you hope that listeners, get out of listening to this podcast, following this story? There are folks out there that are vulnerable to romance scams.
Yes.
There are older folks who are vulnerable to being taken advantage of, and everyone in between. What do you hope they get out of this podcast?
So and in this story, a lot of people wouldn't come forward. A lot of people wouldn't talk because they're embarrassed about being conned, right? Being a victim. And I'm not, right? I'm more angry that I was betrayed. And so my coming forward is my way of trying to warn everybody about the different cons, and we detail them in this podcast. And because while these guys are in jail, and by the way, we're talking 16 and a half years ago, this murder was committed. And just on Friday, so 3 days ago, the judge finally sentenced Danny to life without parole.
Wow.
And his lawyer, who's up next, is in on May 16th, is his next date, and we're hoping that the same fate happens there. So the story we may have another episode coming, hopefully. So we're going to close a lot of the unanswered things. But I want the listeners here. I want the listeners to the podcast. My campaign here is for people to be alert to the cons, because they're getting smarter. They're getting better. I just had a friend tell me about how he got conned at a job interview, where the job interview wasn't real, but it was for a real company, somebody posing as somebody from Salesforce.com. And then at the end of the interview, after he got the job, they wanted him to buy his equipment that he would get reimbursed for. So, and as we're getting into a world where people are starting to look for jobs again, this is going to be popular. So please pay attention when a little small flag is a big red flag. When your gut tells you something's wrong, follow your gut. If I hadn't followed my gut when I was in Brazil to go home a week early, things would have been a lot different for me. Because they, same thing. They sold this guy's house after they killed him, and it was this is not a good story. And this is where people really need to pay attention and talk to your parents about this. Talk to your kids about this.
Yeah.
With AI, it's getting smarter. There's a great show on for the relationship scams. Everybody should watch. There's a show on Hulu called Trafficked, season 2, episode 2. Romance scams, tells you everything you need to know. Yeah. Please watch it. But also, please watch it, or please listen to him. True Crime News presents American Hustlers. Clear your calendars; you will be hooked. But please pay attention to these cons; it's very important.
Our thanks to Tyson Wrench, citizen detective. If you thought Ace Ventura, pet detective, was somebody, you need to take a listen to True Crime News presents American Hustlers, featuring the real story, the true story of citizen detective Tyson Wrench. Thank you for your work, and good luck with the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me and spreading the word.
Absolutely. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Senator Tammy Duckworth is endorsing Black Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton for Senator Dick Durbin's seat. Stratton, also backed by Governor J.P. Pritzker, is seen as the favorite in the mostly Democratic state. A coalition of 19 states is suing the Trump administration over its plan to cut federal funds from schools with diversity programs. The states claim Trump's order is illegal and would harm vulnerable students. The lawsuit comes after a court paused the April 3rd memo. A pro-Trump group filed an ethics complaint against Black New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. James denies the claims, calling them political payback. Her lawyers say the allegations stem from mistakes, not misconduct. And Hall of Famer and former Knicks star Dick Barnett has passed away at 88. He helped win titles in 1970 and 1973 and played for the first HBCU to win a national basketball championship. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's a slow drive as you make your way along the 210 freeway. Now, this crash in Azusa, eastbound at Vernon, they're clearing it out of lanes. Overall slowing, loading up out of Pasadena, getting away from Sierra Madre. A wreck in Riverside for the 60 eastbound of the 215-91. It's out of lanes now, but that drive remains tough away from Rubidoux Boulevard. Let's also look at Orange, 57 northbound, slowing at Orangewood to the 91, and ahead from Diamond Bar Boulevard to the 60 freeway.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The next 2 days for the Lakers will say a lot about how long their season will last. It could end Wednesday night if they lose at home to Minnesota in Game 5. Lakers coach J.J. Redick has some major damage control on his agenda the next 2 days. Did he lose confidence among his players by not making any substitutions in the second half? No coach has done that in an NBA playoff game in 28 years. Jackson Hayes, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, and Jordan Goodwin sat on the bench the entire second half. What would their mindset be going into Game 5? Does Redick talk to them in private or as a group to let them know they are still valuable? Not giving LeBron some rest in the second half Sunday led to him being scoreless in the fourth quarter. The Lakers will have a hard time beating good teams without LeBron's late game production. Hopefully, Redick understands that. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you missed any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
At Providence, health equity is the foundation of our community health initiatives, ensuring care reaches those who need it most. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in America. African Americans face a higher risk of life-threatening issues like hypertension, the number one cause of stroke. 55% of Black adults have high blood pressure. The good news is 80% of heart disease is preventable with healthy lifestyle changes and patient-centered care provided by the Providence Heart and Vascular Institute. From routine screenings to advanced procedures, Providence provides comprehensive care for the heart conditions that overly impact our community by ensuring patients receive treatments tailored to their needs. Let's stop the trend of being 30% more likely to die from heart-related problems. Take charge of your heart health with world-class cardiologists who deliver the compassionate care you deserve. Visit providence.org/SoCalHeart. That's providence.org/SoCalHeart to request an appointment.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds. Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really delighted to welcome Lashai Lamish. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right. You know, Nii-Quartelai Quartey, I'm big on names. We got to get it right. I'm really delighted to have you here. You are the Master of Ceremonies for the Shin Yun Performing Arts, and you're here to get us a bit more interested in some of the programming that you all have coming up.
Sure, yeah. So we're actually closing in on the end of our 2025 tour. We tour from around Christmas until May every year. It's an all-new production every year. We got about 2.5 weeks left of tour. We got 8 companies touring around the world at the same time. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky right now. We're still going to be in Chicago, in Providence, Rhode Island, and a bunch of other cities. And it's a really fast-paced show. So a lot of people ask me what the format of the production is. So it's about 2 hours plus intermission. And it's not one narrative. It's a bunch of vignettes that show you the diversity and the spiritual background and the ethnic and religious background of traditional Chinese culture. And it goes all the way from legends of creation all the way to today, to showing what's happening in China today, and even in stories of from literature like Monkey King from Journey to the West, and Pigsy and all the other sidekicks. And there's a love story. And it's really a lot of fun. So as an MC, I come on stage, I introduce the next piece. There's not a lot of background that you need to know, none at all. And then the main art form is classical Chinese dance, which is different from ballet. Some people call it Chinese ballet, but it's really a whole other system. In fact, in some ways, it's more similar to Chinese martial arts. They actually grew up kind of simultaneously historically for thousands of years. And some of the same moves that could be used, let's say, to dodge a spear, turns into a backflip in Chinese dance. And so that's the main art form. And you don't really need a language for that. And then we have an orchestra, a live orchestra. And this orchestra is, and it's really unique in that it combines both classical Western, symphonic tradition orchestra and Chinese instruments, like the 2-stringed erhu and the plucked pipa and a range of percussion instruments. And it's actually the first orchestra in the world to combine these two as permanent members. And we have instrumental solos and singers and folk dances, ethnic dances. It's a lot of fun, and it's all new every year.
I mean, what I love about this, and some of our leaders, learners, and listeners may be wondering, okay, what does this classical dance and music company, why should our mostly African American audience be interested in this? And in my view, I think it's important not to judge a book by its cover. I think there are a lot of folks that, for example, are responding to Sinners, the hit film by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, that includes a storyline around the Chinese in the South. A lot of people didn't know that story and the relationship between Chinese folks and Black folks in the South. And so, for our audience, what is it about the Xinyun performing arts and this show that's traveling that you think particularly appeals to an African American audience?
Well, I would say it particularly appeals to anybody. I mean, I'm not Chinese either. What am I doing emceeing a Chinese show, right? And we perform all over the world. So this is a good question. And it's a question not just for African Americans. You know, let's say we're performing in Huntsville, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. I was there earlier this year, both these cities. It's 80, 90% African Americans in the audience there. And we do really well there year after year, and people are drawn to it. And we were just in Pittsburgh. I met the mayor of Pittsburgh came and gave us a proclamation. He's African American. So this is very, I think the reason that it connects with people, be they African Americans in the southern part of the United States, or Japanese people, or people in France or Italy, wherever we go, is because yes, it's traditional Chinese culture, but what we're showing, and you see this on the billboards wherever we perform, is China before the Chinese Communist Party took power. So this is the China that was there before Mao Zedong, before the Cultural Revolution, before all this was wiped out really deliberately by the Communist Party there. And that China is much more similar to, I think, the traditional heritage of peoples wherever they are. The values of those stories and legends that we show on stage, they're not Chinese only, right? It's courage, loyalty, integrity, faith, humility. I mean, that resonates with an African American as much as it resonates with a Chinese person, I would imagine. So it's really about the universal shared experience. And I think when people see the show, including Chinese people who feel like they've been deprived of this heritage in China, you can't see Shenyun in China. We're based in New York. This is, you know, it could only be established in the United States, where you have artistic freedom, where you have freedom of expression. And a lot of the people who started the performance, the company itself, were actually people who fled religious persecution in China. Falun Gong practitioners, some of them survivors of labor camps and torture, some of them with family languishing in prisons in China still, some of them with orphans who lost parents to torture, prisoners of conscience. And so they're very close to the story of what is it like to live under oppression and wanting that freedom to express yourself and express your heritage. And I think that's something that speaks to everybody. I think African Americans especially can relate to some of those ideas. And by bringing this in a positive message, it really is something that uplifts people. That's one of the words that we hear audience members say a lot. They came to the show expecting something cultural, you know, entertaining, but they didn't realize they were going to get inspired. They were going to leave with ideas, with inspiration for their own faith, if it is faith, or for their own career. We have people from Hollywood, producers and fashion designers say they got new ideas for the next avatar, whatever it is. So it's really something that I think is more about what we have in common as people, Chinese, Caucasian, African American, than really it is about a specific cultural experience. But the overall narrative is traditional Chinese culture.
I think that sounds absolutely fascinating, and I think at a time where we need a dose of inspiration. But I appreciate, you know, the reference to sort of pre-communist China. It really serves as a reminder, particularly in times like this, of how fragile our freedoms are, and how, you know, when we take our freedoms for granted, we don't have the opportunity to connect with our culture and other cultures around the world in the same way. Lachey, I've got to ask you, you know, what got you hooked into the Shenyun performing arts world? I mean, you know, were you a dancer? Were you a choreographer? I mean,
no.
You know, what drew you in?
Really, it was my interest in Chinese history and culture. And that to me came from my spiritual quest. And for that, you got to go back to my baseball playing days, where I was a pitcher and I was trying to be a professional player. And at the time, this was back in the 90s, there wasn't a lot of mental performance coaching. But everybody says if you want to reach the top level, you got to work on your mental skills, but nobody was really teaching it. There were just a couple of books out. And from that, I started exploring meditation, visualization, guided imagery. And from that took me over to yoga, and then to Tai Chi and Qigong and Chinese philosophy and Taoism and Buddhism. And eventually I found Falun Gong meditation. And I didn't know what it was really at the time, but it was like mind and body. It was really interesting. And the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. And I started practicing this. And then I learned only after I started practicing that actually it was being persecuted in China. So many people practicing it in China that the Chinese Communist Party banned it. The leader at the time, in spite of a lot of opposition from other people in the government, said, you know, we're gonna ban this. And it's been 25 years now of just a brutal campaign. Hundreds of thousands of people rounded up, sent to labor camps. We're talking about people being killed for their organs. It has then spread to the Uyghur community over in Xinjiang as well, in terms of that kind of persecution. And so I said, well, I want to learn about this more, and I want to learn the language. And so it was a kind of a dual interest, the human rights on the one side and the kind of spiritual and connection to the culture. I said, if I really want to understand this culture, I got to learn the language. So then I went to Pomona College in California, over there in Claremont, and I started learning Chinese. And then a few years later, when Shenyun was formed, actually a couple years before that, they had these New Year productions. And they said, would you come MC this? You speak Chinese, it'll be fun. And actually, to be honest with you, at the time, I wasn't interested. I said, there are people in China being thrown into labor camps. There's possibly a genocide happening there. What is this song and dance? I'm not interested in that. I'm documenting genocide. I said, no, it'll be fun. You'll see. And performing arts is powerful. And so I did a couple of shows, and I saw how people were moved by the stories and how art has a way to connect with people that is very, very deep. That's why your songs and stories and all these things really touch people in a way that, maybe academically you can't do so well. And so then when Shenyun was founded in 2006 in New York, I was invited to try out, and that's how I got the gig. And so it was really from the cultural side rather than the performing side that I came into this. And I've been with the company now 19 years. I've seen us grow from one company to 2 and 3 and now 8 that tour around the world. It's been, really from nothing. Just a bunch of people with the shirts on their back and not much else, and a dream and some talent. And they put this together, created a nonprofit, and built up to what you see today.
Well, part of what we intend to do on this show is to inspire, it's to lift people up, it's to challenge people's assumptions about the world, about each other, about ourselves. And it sounds like your story has all of those components and more. We know that, when you engage hearts and minds, that major shifts can happen. And so I hope that all of our leaders, learners, and listeners that are tuned in consider checking out this show for a limit. It's available for a limited time only. You can go to shenyunperformingarts.org. That's SHENYUN performingarts.org to find out if when they're going to be in a city near you. But thank you, Lachey. Thank you for sharing your story and your love for the arts.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to share it with everybody.
Absolutely. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. The quiet part out loud when we come forward. Thanks, Lachey.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent. And the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights. Hey, we all got rights.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. SMP volunteers work in their community, educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an SMP open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit caspvolunteer.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you, working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. What a day it has been. Let me just remind folks that here at KBLA, there's an initiative, a campaign really that we're leading called Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project, where we really are seeking to hear the stories of federal workers, particularly Black federal workers who've been impacted by these mass firings. Today on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, I had a chance to interview a few federal workers who have been impacted. We'll be sharing their story very, 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 very soon. And I think as we are coming up on the end of the first 100 days of the Trump administration, I think these stories are incredibly important. After all, isn't the whole point of government to serve the people? And not just the privileged few, but the greater many. Well, I think how we treat our federal workers says a lot about us. At least it says a lot about the current administration. And so we'll be sharing those stories in the coming days. But before we let you go, you just heard, great interview about a traveling Chinese performing arts company that is changing hearts and minds, at least softening them a little bit. But ain't nothing soft about how the Japanese American National Museum is responding to the Trump administration. They are standing up against Trump's anti-DEI efforts and honoring past generations. Sources are reporting that President Trump's executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history, signed last month, aims to revitalize key cultural institutions. The administration wants museums to end DEI programs and eliminate what it considers divisive ideology. And so the Smithsonian closed its DEI office in January. Y'all remember that? Well, one institution is absolutely refusing to do the same. Talking about LA's Japanese American National Museum, which formally opened the day after, they formally opened the day the Rodney King verdict was announced. That was April 29th, 1992. Tomorrow will be the anniversary of their opening. And we know that Boyle Heights native Bill Fujoko, who chairs the board of trustees for the Japanese American National Museum, says that the museum just lost, get this, $1.7 million that the federal government previously approved, and it generally receives about $5 to $7 million. Those funds go to multiple programs, and that's nothing to shrug at. That's big money. After all, they bring up to 20,000 Title I kids from the LA area to learn about Japanese history. They also bring teachers in from across the nation who are able to sit with their staff and sit with docents. And a large number of those docents, guess what? They're survivors. Survivors from the camps. And they learn about the Japanese American experience, particularly what happened in 1942. And then in turn, they take that information and they share it with their students. They feel it's important. So do we. The stories of our communities are important. And just as they think, it's with that hope that these stories wouldn't be repeated. Unfortunately, we're starting to see some evidence that they might be. And so we salute the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles for standing up and standing tall. We have not seen a lot of institutions do what they've done. We haven't seen certainly a lot of universities do what they've done. But hat tip to Bill Fujioka, who's the chair of the board of trustees for the Japanese American National Museum, for leading on the front lines. It's that kind of courage that we all need to summon. And we all get to decide how we're going to participate in the rules that this new administration is creating. Some legal, many of them illegal. But you got to leave it to the courts to work that thing out. Each and every show, we wrap up by saying, do what you can from where you are with what you have. The folks at the Japanese American National Museum are doing that. Thank you for the inspiration. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village. Helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tabitha Smiley. Our sound engineer, Andy. Our show producers, Faraji, Kim, and Art. And of course, each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We curate the show every single day with you in mind. You all stay on my mind throughout the day, and not just me, but everyone who touches the show. And so we're going to keep telling these stories. We're going to keep amplifying the voices of people that are shaping our culture. And we're going to keep giving you your daily dose, your daily political news digest of what you need to know in times such as this. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.